May 8th, and we're so happy to have a special guest with us today. As you can see, Lady Liberty's out there welcoming, and we're going to welcome Susan Sperry, who works with a group that just brings in people from all over the world and welcomes them. And we're just so happy to have Susan with us. So we're going to bring Susan on stage here right now. We're going to get rid of Labor Liberty. Just 1 second here. Lady Liberty has got to be removed. We're going to get Lady Liberty on the side. Now we're here. Susan, good to have you with us.
Thanks, John. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. It was a beautiful thing we got going here. And you're working with a group called World Relief, and I'm acquainted with it a little from the past. So it was founded many years ago, I guess, 1944, right? The war's end, right?
That's right. Founded right at the end of World War II by a church in Boston, Park Street Church, that as they were hearing of the needs that existed at the end of the war, they took an Easter offering together. And from that offering, they were giving aid at the end of the war, and that's what launched the work of World Relief that continues today all around the world. So we're a Christian humanitarian organization that works both in the U.S. and in a number of countries throughout the world.
Yeah, and World Relief is part of the National Association of Evangelicals, which is a group of churches throughout the country.
Right. Yeah.
And they've been with, I think that's from the start too, probably, right? Or pretty near the start. Yeah.
Yes, that was right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's part of the whole, maybe it's part of the beginning of it too. Well, Chicago is a little different. That's founded in 1980. And anything distinctive about that founding there you want to discuss? About the 1980?
And really 1979, 1980, at that time, you may remember the Vietnam War was coming to an end, and there were many, many people who in particular had been aiding the US during the war, and their lives were at risk. And many of us have heard about the Vietnamese boat people, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people were fleeing. And at that time, churches across the US were mobilizing to welcome people who were fleeing and host them in their homes, help them restart their lives in the US. And World Relief's presence in Chicago started around that time because there were a number of churches here who were involved in welcoming and resettling people fleeing after the end of the Vietnam War. And that's also the time that World Relief's ministry in the US really began, because the State Department approached World Relief and asked if World Relief would be an official partner of theirs to help with the resettlement of the thousands of people who were fleeing.
Well, I remember that period too. My church had some people come, and we helped them, and then they moved away to a warmer climate. But
very understandably, right?
So anyway, that was part of that story.
And so when we began here, it was very much to be walking with churches, partnering with local churches to help them welcome refugees. And over the years, that has grown to become an organization that continues partnering with and walking with local churches, and also providing vital services to immigrants that immigrants uniquely need as they adjust and build their lives in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, how did you get involved with World Relief Chicago and this ministry? How did you get in interest in this, or how did that happen?
Well, I could tell you the long story, the short story, but for the sake of time,
whatever you want to do. I'm open either way.
So I first began to become aware of the refugee situation when I was in high school, and my family, and in fact, at school, I met and got to know a young lady who was an exchange student, and she and her family had been refugees. And as part of her story, and through a number of circumstances, she came to live with my family for about 6 months during our senior year of high school. And that was an incredible experience, completely changed my life. And in that, I began to learn firsthand both how much I needed to change and how much I did change through getting to know someone who came from a different background and experience than I did, but also how much she needed welcome. And that's where God really transitioned me and changed the course of my life to want to be a part of welcoming people. And my journey at World Relief specifically started when I was in college, and then shortly after college, I came to work at World Relief and have been there now for about 18 years in a number of different roles. And I'm thrilled to be directing our offices now in the Chicagoland region.
So in that region, you direct several areas, right?
We have 3 office locations in the Chicago area, one in the city of Chicago in Albany Park, and one in the city of Aurora, and one in DuPage County in the town of Carroll Stream.
Okay. So some of the areas that you work with people on, I've got a listing here that I put together. You can add to it if you wish. I gathered this from a website that you have. One of them is your immigration legal services. I helped on that a few years ago on the DACA program a couple times, and maybe some other things too. I think so. It was more in DACA too, but then those things sort of tapered, the times and etc. And then that was one thing I worked with, and then let's see what we got here. I did English classes for a while. That was really
now
interesting.
You learned English, or you volunteered?
No. Excuse me. This is not the right term. No, this is wrong. Excuse me. I'm thinking wrong. Excuse me, folks. It was the citizenship classes that I did.
Oh, great.
I don't know if we got that on here, but maybe that's under immigration. But those classes, I remember, were really, if you want to know social studies, there's 100 questions. Now, my understanding was everybody did pretty well on the 100 questions, the students. It was usually these 2 other things. Well, we had to do writing and then a speech thing. And those things, probably the speech thing was the tougher one than the writing. Those 2 things were the tough things for these people, if I remember right. Is that correct somewhat?
Yeah, the citizenship test, most of us in the U.S. who were born as citizens haven't seen the citizenship test, and it's incredibly difficult. As I've looked at questions, I've realized that
there is.
I probably would struggle to pass it now, and so it's pretty amazing the amount of work that people do in so many different areas of life to become U.S. citizens, and the drive. We've talked with people recently who are a part of our citizenship classes still and are pursuing tutoring. And even in this time of social distancing, there are still tutors and students meeting together to practice because so many people still want to be ready when the time comes.
You have to pay so much, and then I guess you got, was it 2 or 3 times you can try? Was it 3 or is it 2 times? I mean, 1 and then the next, or is it 1 and then is it 3 a total? I forgot.
It is a challenging process overall. And I think,
and you got to pay like $700-800 too. It's not cheap either.
Yeah. And, so John, with what you mentioned, we provide a variety of direct services to immigrants. So you highlighted our immigration legal services that each year over 4,000 people are served through World Relief to get low-cost immigration legal assistance. And typically we help people with family-based immigration. So that's reuniting with families who are family members who are overseas. We help people pursue their green cards and pursue citizenship. And you mentioned DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and we've walked with many DACA recipients, helping them get their DACA status as well as renew that.
I remember
And then,
working on that.
yeah. And then English classes are held throughout at a few different places in the city of Aurora. Of course, right now, all English classes are being held online, and teachers are connecting with students that way. And then we hold classes alongside our other locations as well in DuPage County and in Chicago.
Well, that's very important. And then you sort of mentioned the other immigrant services. That's like maybe even picking people up at the airport, right? Or taking them in housing, et
Yeah,
cetera, right?
yeah. You know, you mentioned earlier when World Relief started in the Chicagoland area, we began through providing refugee resettlement and helping refugees build their lives in the country. And we still do that. And that's an important part of our work. And we also provide services to immigrants, including refugees, helping them find jobs or pursue career paths, helping kids navigate the school system and parents understand the school system, assisting with counseling, and then providing overall case management. And that means connecting people to local services, helping families who are facing maybe a specific challenge that they want our assistance to navigate, or helping them overcome a specific barrier to work or to understanding the culture.
Yeah, you try to work in different ways with people
Yeah,
there, and it's something else. And
yeah. I think
uh, we're going to move on here. Oh, here's a special family. I'm going to put it on the side of you. We'll put it on the side here.
yeah,
I don't know. I just learned about this on the website today. It's a Myanmar family that had gone through a lot of difficulties, and this father was away from his wife for a while and everything, and they just fleeing Myanmar.
yeah,
I got to
yeah.
pronounce that. Myanmar.
Myanmar, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, former Burma, and they were helped by World Relief. So that's a kind of this is pretty current. This is this just last few months ago here on a
Yeah,
special
this story,
Valentine's Day.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the story that they shared with us, and actually it was published, I believe, in the Daily Herald as well. They both got married on Valentine's Day, and then they also arrived to the United States on Valentine's Day.
Oh,
So it
really?
has a
Well, there's a lot to do with
twofold,
Valentine's Day for
yeah,
that couple.
twofold meaning for them, and they their story is incredibly powerful about the journey they were on, and what they fled, both in Burma or Myanmar, and also their journey in the U.S. to building their careers. And so, if you haven't seen that story, I encourage you to check it out
Yeah, you have it on your blog, I
on
think,
our blog.
your
Yeah,
page blog.
yeah,
Um, so that was very interesting. And so, what's the current status of World Relief Chicago, just generally, or I guess we can go about Chicago or broader than that. Whatever you want to discuss on that. What would you say you're at? What's the current situation here? Because we
yeah,
know a lot of things have been happening on immigration and other things. So, yeah.
yeah. I would love to talk all day about the current situation, but I'll take 2 minutes. Um,
Okay.
so throughout our work in the Chicagoland area, we're we're seeing what all of us are seeing everywhere, and that is a lot of incredibly devastating impact from the COVID-19 crisis. So I'll speak to that first. That we've seen a lot of people lose their jobs because of this crisis. We're seeing a lot of people struggle with health conditions of all kinds, and we're seeing a lot of people who are just confused and scared. And for many people, what's happening here just amplifies feelings of fear, of loneliness, of isolation, of anxiety. And so World Relief and is working alongside hundreds of volunteers and our church partners to respond. And that looks like providing food to people who need food, or masks these days,
Okay.
helping to get those to people who need them. And then a lot of direct assistance, whether that's financial assistance, helping people get back into work or look for jobs who've been unemployed. And yeah, so that's very much our current focus right now, John. And then
Wow.
when we entered this COVID season, we had been really trying to help build some of the opportunities. We hear from immigrants and refugees that they want to be able to deepen their roots here, and so that's building more career pathways, offering a variety of different types of English classes to help better prepare people for different career paths. And we've been trying to build our immigration legal services more. I mentioned we've served several thousand people last year, and the demand for low cost, accredited immigration legal services is huge. And we know we fill a unique niche in our communities and want to continue to grow those. So those are a few things that we are continuing to pour resource into and continue to grow. But as I said, our attention right now is very much on the coronavirus crisis.
And how you can help, those people.
Yeah, how we can serve communities and walk alongside people who are being hit particularly hard by this.
Yeah, that's very important. The legal services, that's very good that you're doing that, because there's people out there that get scammed on that legal service front quite a bit. And it's out there.
Yeah,
they're going to help you, give us $5,000 and we'll work all this
right.
out.
Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is the only types of folks who should be helping with immigration advice are either attorneys who know and practice immigration law, or Department of Justice accredited representatives, and that's an accreditation that nonprofits are allowed to have that allow them to help people with their immigration documents and process. And there's a lot of other very well-meaning people, and then some people who don't intend well, who help with immigration matters, and either of those groups can cause a lot of harm.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about a few days ago, the president says no more immigration coming right now, and he's had other restrictions on immigration. And I just wanted your thoughts on that. How does that's really impacted your work, right? Because what we have 84,000 refugees about 2 years ago. Now we're down to, 18,000 or something. You maybe told me, is that what it's something like that?
Yeah, so the most recent proclamation about immigration, while we're very concerned about it, it comes at a time when much immigration to the country right now, it has slowed anyways, and it's slowed specifically because of coronavirus. Mm-hmm. The proclamation the president made a few weeks ago is only meant to be 60 days long at this point in time. So we'll see what happens in another 60 days, but we'll certainly be watching that. But there's a few other policy decisions that have had a significant impact on immigrants. You mentioned refugee resettlement, and the numbers of refugees that have been allowed to resettle in the U.S. is declining. And this year, the ceiling for refugee resettlement is 18,000. And that's much, much less than the 70 or 80,000, which was the trend, and even much higher, as many as 5 years ago. And so just for local comparison, in 2016, our suburban locations in DuPage County and Aurora resettled about 650 refugees.
Okay.
This year so far, we've resettled just over 50 refugees. So it's a very significant difference. And then a couple of other areas of impact, though, and among that impact the immigrant community overall, DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is there's currently a case that the Supreme Court is going to be ruling on soon, and that's basically a decision about whether or not President Trump can dismantle the DACA program. You may remember it's a program that was started by executive order under President Obama, and President Trump made some decisions to begin dismantling that program. And so we're waiting to hear what the Supreme Court says. The impact of that is huge for over 800,000 DACA recipients who are currently working and contributing to our economy. And so whatever the Supreme Court decides, we believe there's going to need to be some legislative action.
Right.
And so, you know, if folks want, I'd strongly encourage people to pay attention to what happens there and ways we can advocate for a permanent solution for these folks who were brought to the U.S. as children and don't have permanent lawful status in the U.S. And so we really want to see a solution in place for them so that they can freely and without fear rebuild and continue building their lives in the U.S.
How many DACA was there? About 800? Was it 800,000 or something?
About 800,000.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask this. You don't have to expound too much, but this has been on my mind. I read on it. I still quite want. If you could just give me a quick explanation, what this restriction about the public charge. You know anything about that? Can you just give me a quick overview of what that is and the impact of that?
Yeah. So my caveat, John, I'm not an immigration attorney myself.
Okay.
So
see, I was just going to get some a little more better than my
layman's explanation. Yeah. My team might talk to me afterward. So public charge is a statement that refers to a whole group of basically rules that relate to grounds of inadmissibility to the U.S.
Right.
So that's a portion of immigration law, but to kind of boil it down to layman's terms, it refers to a series of criteria that could be evaluated to determine whether or not people access specific public benefits
Right.
or become a charge of the state. So rely on the government for meeting their basic needs. And typically that public charge rule has been applied primarily to assess whether someone would become a permanent ward of the state or a permanently in need of cash from the government.
Right.
So the new rules, there were new rules put in place that just recently, within the last couple of months, became active that broadened the definition of public charge. And it's while with the broadened definition, there's a lot of confusion around it, and especially right now when there's so much.
I didn't want to get too deep. No, the reason
I
asked was because of COVID-19.
We do a lot of for viewers, we do a lot of trainings around public charge, and there's some great resources on our website that explain it much better than I did.
I didn't look. I didn't see that.
So you can, John, I'll send that to you. You can take a look at it too.
I didn't see that.
But what I want to boil down real quick with that is that right now there are a lot of pieces of aid that people can and should access that are not going to be considered as part of public charge.
That's what I wanted to ask.
And so there's a lot of fear out there that if I get help from a church, is that considered public charge?
Right.
No, that's not. And so when in doubt, we want people to speak to an immigration attorney or a Department of Justice accredited representative. Look at some of the general criteria that are in places like the website.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's related to COVID-19 and how to get the help and if to get hospitalizations and other things. And I think some of the public people, in policy have said they should just knock it off for this time and not even make you think about it. I just quote, knock it off. If they could do that legislatively and just so you don't even have to think about that and for for the health of our immigrants and undocumented. Sorry about that. We got off track there. Maybe. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, I can be quick as we wrap up.
So give me a little thoughts, some final thoughts maybe on what you see as direction and where World Relief maybe be going.
Yeah, and I highlighted a little of this
earlier.
Yeah,
you did.
Moving in direction.
Rethinking things.
And then continuing to partner with local churches to serve in our community, and particularly to walk with immigrants in the areas of career pathways, mentoring people as they pursue other career paths, helping people learn English, and then as we mentioned, continuing to grow our English classes and some of the opportunities around the community for people to learn and improve their English.
It's good. It's good. Well, let's have some ways to help World Relief. I think we can just address this very shortly.
Sure.
Some action steps, I would call them. We can volunteer, right? You're doing online things right now with volunteers, right? Is that how you use them?
Yeah, and really specifically, there's 3 ways we're looking for people to volunteer. One is providing homework help for kids.
Oh, that's cool.
The second is doing English tutoring, so helping someone practice their English. And then the third is connecting with people through what we call being a friendship partner. And that's fairly general, but it means helping with understanding the culture, maybe helping to explain some of the realities of this really weird world that we're in right now with coronavirus, and just being a friend in these times.
Right. That's very good. And then, of course, you can give money to World Relief. I mean, I'm sure that's absolutely. Always needed, right?
Yeah, funds right now are going to provide the services that people need, help finding a new job, and help with emergency assistance as well. And then with in-kind donations, we need masks, especially cloth masks. And then I know everyone's asking for this, but wipes, hand sanitizer, all of the supplies that you can't find in the stores anymore. But if someone has extras and is able to give, that's a huge need.
That's great. And then we got one more thing here. This might be calling your legislators, usually at the national level, about some angles on our immigration and helping World Relief and helping these people more than just. It's not really just helping. It's helping people we're talking about here in these things. And World Relief many times brings up advocates of these type of things, and World Relief's in another part of a group called the Evangelical Immigration Table.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
That brings up a lot of issues too. So that's where you can find out more how to get involved with the political side of things here with our refugees, our immigrants, and just help. So you want to add anything to that?
As well said.
Okay.
Well, we can provide the links to Evangelical Immigration Table.
No, I should do. I don't have that here right now.
I'll get that to you.
It's a very good group, and I should have thought of that one.
Yeah.
We'll bring that up on another time here. I'll bring it up to the audience here. So here's the World Relief Chicago website.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get more information there. You can see that. It's actually World Relief Chicago. It's all together in .org. And then if you want to learn more about what's happening out in the suburbs more with the DePage Aurora, that's World Relief DePageAurora.org. So that's the links there. And we just thank Susan for stopping by with us here.
Thanks, John.
She's in her Chicago office or home office, whatever she's.
Yep.
Nobody made any big thunder noise like you were talking about. So.
No loud noise behind me.
Through here. So
in front of me.
I really thank Susan for being with us here, and we'll I'm sure we'll get some updates down the road from Susan and World Relief, but we're just thank you, Susan, so much for being with us. And
Thank
I'm
you,
going
John. I'm
to
so
show.
grateful. So grateful for your support and
Okay, thank you
this
very much.
opportunity.
I'm just going to put up a few more things here really quick. Just remember commentary on Friday. It's going to be follow up on Latinos and COVID-19. There's a lot about, it's the same as African Americans just been hit by the coronavirus, Latinos. And we're working on Monday, so just hold tight. We're going to have some good for Monday. Well, Susan, again, thank you for being with us. And we just appreciated your time with us. So God bless everybody out there, and bye-bye.
Bye.